Hi there, and good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to Colleague Conmoy's Creative Futures programme. I'm so excited today to be able to invite a really special speaker back to us, is William Todd Jones, who I kind of think as a friend of Colleague Conmoy, and we've really got a fantastic opportunity to gain insight into his 30 years career in the TV, film, and theatre industries. Before I kind of hand you over to Todd, just a couple of things. Just to partway through, we're going to have an opportunity to ask Todd some questions. So if you want to put some comments or ask some questions in the chat bar down the side of your screen, I'll pass those on to Todd as we go through the presentation. I did think about writing an introduction, but I did find it very difficult with Todd. You know, he's a storyteller, a writer, a director, a performer, a puppeteer, a superhero at times, and also an environmentalist. And I thought it's very, very difficult to kind of write an introduction that will cover all those facets of what he does. So I thought, who better to untangle that really than actually to hand over to Todd and William Todd Jones. Okay, Todd, are you ready?
No. I can't see. There's a technical problem. Something wrong technically. I don't know. Don't press the buttons. Oh no, that's the chat. I don't want to chat.
No swearing, please, Todd.
Excuse me. I'll clean me lens. That must be it. A bit of spittle on that. Fantastic. Right. Oh. Hello. Nice to see you. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to give a sort of vague introduction to what I do. Mostly it's wiggling dollies and being silly, which I know lots of you may have already experienced or seen some of that by things that I've been in. And I was going to show you some aspects of the stuff that I've done over the years. As Alistair said, 30 years, that's ridiculous, isn't it, to be playing with dolls? And then more recently in this sort of peculiar world, which is now hybrid of puppetry and CG and anything that works. So I'll put my special friend away. The reason for bringing that out is that although there's nothing there, you as a member of the audience will give it some sense of emotion, some value, maybe some story. And a lot of the things that I'm involved in, well, are all about story and character, and they appear in things. They've appeared in films over the course of years and TV shows. But I want to just sort of come right back to this whole idea of, you know, what is a character, what is animation. So here you go. You know, it doesn't take very much to indicate some sort of life. So please feel free to put your questions in. I'll try and answer them as I can. Alistair will rein me in and ensure that I pay proper attention to the whole chat. But right now I'm going to show you some images of stuff that I've done. And there will be opportunities to talk about all of that as we go along, I hope. So we're having a slideshow. Okay, so that's me with you. Hooray! Nice to be back, by the way, guys. I would really like to be in the room. I had so much fun when I was there, and this is extraordinarily hard to fiddle around when I can't actually see you. But on the other hand, maybe you don't want me in the room. So this is my mantra: the past is captured by memory. Memory is passed in story. Story is the key to understanding the present, and with imagination gives us the power to tell the future. So I've been doing this for an awfully long time, and I'm just going to hold on that, and we'll go somewhere else. That's me that's me in 1985 with Jim Henson on a film called Labyrinth. And I still use sticks like that to show how tall things are. Obviously, I'm not particularly tall, and I'm a lot less wide there than I am now. But we're going to show you this little video of me. of my stuff. Okay, so my character wants to show this, so hopefully you've got that on screen. And I'll go down. Okay, David, here we go. Always gone technical again, is fantastic. Can you see? Can you see in that? Look, it's him. Ah, ooh, what's that? Alien wolves and still walkers. Oh, very nice. Very ooh. He's ugly. Oh, that was me. Ah, big mouth and a bit grumpy. So all these sorts of things that Todd chap was involved in. Bit of that. You should know some of these, I'd imagine. I did get to drive that car. It's in the screen, this character thing. Oh, look at her! Oh. Yeah. Be careful who you like. So you get a bit of that too. That's why Bob Hoskins is looking like that. Rourke, you might recognise. Oh, scary. And a bit of Muppet Christmas Carol. And a pig. Often done pigs and robots. Do lots of robots. Very atmospheric. Ah, favourite bit this. Little Shop of Horrors. That plant puppet weighed half a ton. And a bit of Judge Dredd. And back to Labyrinth. Mr. Bowie and my godson Toby. In this one, he destroyed the Earth now. They're very tolerant, those guys. Strung up with the elastic. Destruction. By the way, if we're not careful, we'll do that ourselves. Who's he? Much younger. Oh. Various characters. I'll go back to my other seat. Hey there. Okay, David, you should go off. Hopefully I'm back over on this live thing. So you can see some of the things that I've been involved in over the years. Feel free to ask questions about any of those sorts of things. I'll just go back to my sharing. Ooh, what are the different types of puppets? Well, I'll try and show you a few. So let's go here. So that's the war machine that I built for Labyrinth. And that gets squished, and it was the guy in there called Rob was just about 3.5 feet tall, very tolerant. It wasn't a very comfortable costume, mostly rigid latex and leather. And then on Labyrinth, I mean, that's a good indication of the type of puppets. Ludo at the back had a guy, and it was 6'6", with his hand way up in the air inside the head, and then his body generating movement for much of the rest of it. Hoggle was Sherry. She was about just over 3 feet, and Sir Didymus there, for those who remember the movie, is a hand puppet on a puppet dog. I'm the one with the horns and the hair, and I had contact lenses in as well. I couldn't really breathe very well in that costume, so I'd do about 30 seconds and they'd have to come and rush, put a hose in so I didn't pass out. I did a lot of stunts in that, and ended up on quite a lot of Nurofen after a broken rib. You saw that one earlier. That's my better look. It's a fiberglass costume which I'm kneeling into, and with my big toe I could make the tail swish. It was the early days of compositing, 89, so the BBC could afford 6 seconds of a Lipizzaner stallion galloping around and then stuck my body on it. Again, now this is 30 years old. This is the first Batman with Michael Keaton. That isn't him in the costume, but it is the costume. I did get to drive the Batmobile. Got to play robots in Lost in Space. And these may be costumes that you guys would be particularly interested in that I think a lot of the technology, techniques, skill sets from film and television have now very much moved to stage. Now, hopefully you recognize these characters from Ice Age. This was a stage show I toured the world with called Ice Age Live. I performed Manny the Mammoth and was master puppeteer, training everybody else on how to move like an animal. Great to go to lots of different countries in the world and perform in many different languages, which was really about a button being pressed and me just doing the lip sync along with everyone else. A lot of gymnastics. A lot of the performers were from Cirque du Soleil, so an incredible level of skill as acrobats, and the ice skaters were often ex-Olympic, so I was the only one that let the side down in terms of quality. This is from a stage show I did called The Nut Job, and I really just wanted to show you this. Like, look at the difference in the quality of that emotion from that puppet. The rest of us are the same, but just with one simple movement, you know, naive to very angry. And that's all the puppets that I built. Please feel free to ask me questions specific to them. The materials that I use tend to be expensive, but they do the job. That fur is from NFT and costs about £50 per square foot, but they'll make anything you want. I designed a Scooby-Doo costume for the stage earlier this year, or last year, which is going to be touring Canada, America, and then maybe elsewhere. But the same sort of fur, a lot of the techniques are the same, the materials inside, nylons, plastics. And obviously, the people in these costumes have to be able to do acrobatics, and then sometimes I just do big things. Rod puppetry has been around for thousands of years, and I like it as a way of not having to hide the performer, but getting a character that is pretty cool. That one you saw earlier, that's the Thark. William Dafoe is the actor there, who I taught to walk on stilts, and he was motion captured in order to drive the CG character of the Thark in a film called John Carter of Mars. That's me in John Carter of Mars being Wooler, which was the character you saw earlier. It was not particularly dignified running around in green lycra, but they mapped over me the movement of the characters. Okay, so I'll stop sharing that and come back to that later, see if we've got some questions. Alistair, anything's coming in that you want to ask?
Yeah, I've got one question come through. I think it's kind of probably what everybody was asking for. How did you get into the films to start off with? You know, did you have like people who were already working in there and kind of give you the opportunities, or were you kind of knocking on people's doors? You know, or how did you get into it? I don't know how long we got.
Some of the students may have heard this story, and I know you have. I grew up in the valleys of Wales, up in a place called Nantaglo near Bryn Mawr. There wasn't very much there, and it was dying distinctly at the time. that industry, heavy industry, steel and coal, which had been the bulwark of those societies, had sort of pretty much collapsed. The rug was pulled out from under their feet. There were some very distinct political decisions made in the late 70s and early 80s, which I think really undermined community there, gave them very little hope. And so I, as a student, went to Cardiff to the Royal College of Music and Drama, and that was part of what my exploration of the world was. The other bit was politics, and I got arrested a couple of times for demonstrating against Margaret Thatcher. That wasn't particularly helpful to anybody, though I felt justified in doing that. Then left for America, where I was for a couple of years, discovered puppetry. And when I came back, I got to work for Spit and Image. That was one of the things. And I did do an election special where my hand was inside Margaret Thatcher performing Tomorrow Belongs to Me, which is the Nazi song from Cabaret, with a salute, which I won't go into too much detail about. And I wasn't arrested. 25 million people saw that program, and it was applauded. I thought puppetry is a cool thing. I was very driven. I left Wales because there wasn't anything in the valleys for me. I thought maybe there would be something in Cardiff. I didn't speak Welsh, or I still don't speak Welsh. And so at the time, there wasn't the industry that is there now. And I will come on to that later with his Dark Materials, because right now it's astonishing. I mean, you guys are moving into a world where there are a lot of opportunities, I believe. And I was just really persistent. I was given a very, very lucky break on the film Labyrinth, where I started, I got a job moving boxes, then I got a job building tables, a reasonable carpenter. I have taught technical theatre and set design, that as an aside. But I was picked upon because I was trained as a dancer, or had trained as a dancer, went and danced professionally in America, and was given jobs inside puppets by Jim, who thought, I was very physical, a bit bouncy, rugby, a mix between art and rugby, which seemed to be quite successful. That's how I got in, and have been lucky, really. I mean, that isn't a course you could chart. You can't say, I want to go there, and it happened. This was very, very fortunate. A lot of opportunity, and certainly coming from where I did in the valleys, unexpected. Alistair.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of connected to that. You talked about the Royal Welsh College, the Welsh College of Music and Drama. What was the course you studied there?
A performers course at the time was
Right.
I was on. I mean, it was a bit peculiar, a bit like a BTEC at the time. The thing that really changed everything for me was dance. At the time, that they were doing ballet, modern dance, jazz. Carolyn Lamb, Tim Hext were the teachers there, and it's an awfully long time ago, but I remember them because they absolutely changed my life. I'd never really found the thing that fired me up. I was a sort of all right actor, but suddenly I could do all the physicality. I could put it into a costume. It didn't matter what I looked like or sounded like, and I ended up as a Muppet, as a big furry creature one. I did some of that hand puppets, but a lot of the big body costume type stuff, because I had low center of gravity, front row of a scrum, so attitude to the world.
So do you think the course that you did at the college, it didn't necessarily equip you with specific skills? It kind of, did it push you in a general direction?
In the Welsh National Youth Theatre, I was on their technical course, which I love. Right. And I always wanted to combine the two. I don't see any boundary. There should not be a boundary in terms of storytelling in how you do that. I tend to do it with props, Here's a prop. Now it's a character. And it's a stick and string. I broke into the workshop at the Welsh College of Music and Drama numbers of times and actually built the sets for little shows that I was doing. I just couldn't understand why there might be some boundary of, well, sorry, darling, just pass me the prop and I'll make it work. It's like, no, I want to make it. I want to make the prop. And nowadays I am much more of a maker that passes to other people.
That's come up in one of the questions. There's probably two around making. One of them kind of goes back to the fur, which was kind of, why is it so expensive? And the other one I'm just reading up here about kind of, I think it kind of links on what you're just talking about making. Do you make the masks and the puppets?
Yeah, I was in Romania on a Netflix horror movie last autumn, and the funny thing about horror movies is the people are so nice. You think they're all dark and but no, they're really very nice and chatty. And Romania is an extraordinary country. I had a lovely time, and they gave me a workshop and a couple of people to help me. So we were making molds, building stuff from scratch, fabricating with whatever I could find. And for me, it was a really good exercise because I couldn't get the stuff I normally get. I mean, I was able to get cable ties, but the plastic wasn't as good as the ones I tend to get here, so they snapped. And electrical tape and gaffer tape, all the stalwarts. But other things we sort of had to make up there because the film industry there isn't that developed. And although the engineering and stuff they've got a good industry in that, it doesn't really feed through. Whereas I go for quite expensive materials, as I say. I use a thing called Plastizote an awful lot because I can vac form it. I can even do a pattern in CAD that you then CNC'd. I do a lot of vac forming. That wasn't had no access to that there. Didn't really have big workshop with lathes and mills and things, which I would use oftentimes for some of the smaller components because it's all bespoke. Film TV is often you do it once and you're recreating the whole of the world in that camera shot. So I really enjoy making. I do tend to hand a lot of that over for some of the things now because the different skill sets, you use everybody's skill when recreating the world.
I remember you were telling me a story when you were, I think a year or so ago, you were in Africa. And you were working it, and you kind of had to kind of do things a bit on the fly.
That's all I carry with me. You can do an awful lot with that and a bit of wire, and I'm not kidding. Yes. Well, there were a couple of things. I walked across Kenya dressed as a rhinoceros, and I had a leather man to repair the rhinoceros because it did less well than the humans. And then in an excited way, maybe I can announce here that we have been granted a potential screening of the film that I was involved in Africa a year or so ago. And the director may come on board and do a show and tell or talk as well, which is really exciting. But special for her colleague Kumioev, you'll be able to see that otherwise I can't really talk very much about at this point.
But I think what I was thinking about...
I can say thermoplastics don't do very well in 50-degree heat. Everything bent and warped, and then there's the dust of the desert. And it's like, it was utterly crazy. It was guerrilla warfare, nearly.
I think one of those skills that they maybe don't teach you initially is to kind of think on your feet and be agile and kind of robust in how you do things, I suppose, really. Yeah.
It is very physical. The stuff that I do on set still tends to be very physical. I don't do stunts anymore. I don't bounce very well. But, I've been fired out of a cannon and dropped off a building in a costume. So the costumes actually have to withstand all of that. And if you're doing these costumes for stage, there isn't time to repair them necessarily. With Ice Age Live, we were doing 3 shows a day for 4 days a week in Moscow, and wherever it happened to be, Istanbul, in Guatemala City. I've been all over the world with it. And if it breaks, you fix it, and that includes welding. And
I noticed one of the questions that's come through was about kind of, I suppose, wrapped up in this idea of your sort of input into a production, because someone was asking, do you kind of do set design but when you're kind of creating a puppet or a character, is it just you, or is it part of a kind of a dialogue between lots of
different absolutely partners? A dialogue. The whole reason for the puppet or the character, however you're going to do it, whether it's a body costume or some sort of walking device or whatever it happens to be, it plays a part, it fulfills a role within the script. That's simply it. And so you do whatever is necessary for that, but there's obviously tricks and illusions that you can pull that will work better than others. So I've always been involved with the executive producers, directors, art department, costume, sound, even. Everyone gets involved in that whole thing in order to get the thing in front of camera and recorded. And that's certainly for film and television. I mean, it is quite an odd thing to think about. You have to deal with the sound department. Yeah, you don't, your costume squeaking. Maybe a bit of lubricant there, sir, would help.
So do you start like when you're creating a character puppet, for example, do you start from like the inside out, or you start from the character outwards and go in?
There's a thing that I always do, and I can't understand why some people don't, is I read the script. And then I would often say to people that, look, I can understand what you want, where you're trying to go with the narrative of that scene, but you're either going to have to pay an awful lot of money, or you rewrite it, or we design a thing, a hybrid, so it uses a bit of CG, it uses a bit of live action interaction, and sometimes you don't even see it at all. People just go, ah, as the thing's meant to be coming at you, because the audiences believe that. And the best use of your time, early on, is to find where the delete key is, and press that on the script and rewrite a bit in order to get it to be possible. I've worked on movies. The one with the biggest budget was John Carter of Mars, and I think it's a lovely movie. The script is dodgy, but the design is gorgeous in it. Disney dropped it. It could have gone much further. But I would recommend the people watching have a look at that from a design point of view. And then think that cost in the region of $250 million. To do. That's an awful lot of money. Now, where is that money on screen? What's going on? It was sort of very clever CG and a lot of compositing and stuff. But blimey, that's an awful lot of money.
It is. I mean, I know a lot of the guys are here because they'd like to hear about his Dark Materials, and I don't know if you've got anything you could show us for that, or is that next on the list, or
yeah, I think it's perfect timing to go.
Maybe we'll come back to some questions after that. Maybe
I think that would be good. So I'll show you bits of behind the scenes of his Dark Materials. I hope. Yeah. Okay, here we go. So hopefully you guys can see that. Now, it is really tricky, this, because I can see what's on the screen, and I hope you can hear me talking about this, but I'm not getting any feedback from you guys. So I'm just going to trundle through, and please ask your questions after. Feel free to ask your questions after. Some of it should be self-explanatory, and I'm anticipating that a lot of you have seen this anyway, so there isn't really going to be stuff from the actual series. It's more behind the scenes. Okay, I do have to ask, this is my demon. Everyone asks, well, what's your demon? And I think mine's a pine marten. I really love that sort of that character. And this is the CFX making of. So hopefully you guys will recognize styles. You'll also, I'm sure, recognize some really quite simple puppetry and very, very basic design. It doesn't have to do the whole thing. This is quite important. So this is about giving eye lines to actors and giving some sort of sense of a character, some real interaction. Really very much unfinished characters. But all the sort of skill sets you guys will be developing there. Very pleasant way to spend your days. That's Sam, who was the head of my workshop. All of this, I'm sure, will be recognizable to you. So there's still a degree of sophistication in producing these characters, but they're never meant to be photorealistic. They fulfill a function of helping the actors believe, the directors understand what's going on in terms of motivation, the camera team to know where to point the camera, how big the thing is. And that's, I'm sure you guys will have met Elliot. I'm hoping you will. And then we have a little bit of stop motion, time lapse. So that gives a sense of a size, a sense of a weight. There are different sorts of puppets, a sense of movements and eye line. And then some interaction. You can see the usefulness of this. If that wasn't there, that would be very hard to act. And then get out of the way of the wings when it flies out. So just to give you an idea, that's how simple those puppets are. They're easily operable, and not much different to that bird stick that I showed you at the beginning. It's foam, plasters out, some molding. And then they are space fillers, which permit the CG to be put over them, and the CG animators get to see where the light is, where it hits the eyes, what the shape and size are. And that's one of the only times I appear in the whole series. That's my hand holding Stel Maria. And what a character. So when composited, it's not a puppet, it is a real monkey with Ruth, who was quite extraordinary. Those eyes will kill you. And then this gives you an idea maybe of what a semi-realistic furry Pantalaimon might be like as an ermine. This was something that could be actually held and manipulated, and in certain angles, or from certain angles, actually was used. So that was a very, very cheap puppet that could be filmed on a bit. It wouldn't hold the camera long, or you couldn't look at it for long because you could see it's just a bit of fur like a toy. But it was something that we did because of the level of interaction you could have with it. And that's a lot cheaper than CG. Okay, and there's that same puppet directing scenes. So we have Ruth and Daphne playing out a scene. And there's Brian in the background, who also comes to CYC. He does the Golden Monkey. And that relationship that he developed with his puppet and Ruth, who played Mrs. Coulter, was key to that character. I felt that was one of my greatest successes on the whole thing, getting that working, which Brian just took over and made his own, so that Mrs. Coulter understood her alter ego, you know, this other psychosis aspect of her personality. And then you just have puppets for eye lines. So it's just out the side of the frame, not in camera, but they know where to look. Daphne was really lovely and loved playing with the puppets, and absolutely fine that she should, because then there's a personality, a relationship. Her ability to believe in this stuff was so much better than many of the adults who were actors. You know, as a child, it just seems, well, you can. That's Tom Hooper, who's the director of the first couple of episodes, my puppeteering team and me, with the sort of very naive sort of puppets we had that were space holders and proxies for the CG characters. That's Charlie doing Hester. Hester was a really key character, and again, a simple style of puppet, but has life because it's looking at you and moving. And there's Lynn with Hester moving around, and these were the shots that we did in order to map it all out so you knew where it was. And there's Daphne having a good time, which she did a lot of, and that's that's great. Daughter Ellie in the balloon. I thought you guys might like to see that. That was done on green screen, as you might imagine. A great design for that gondola with Lee and Hester in. And for those of you who've seen the show, you know it gets attacked by cliff ghasts, and that's my team doing some cliff ghasts, and they're very silly. I like to have a physical thing. Never really necessary. You know, it was never going to appear on the screen, but to have something that you could interact with and you could emote through really helps. So now we're going to go to see the bears. So I'm going to just stop that a moment before we come to bears. Alistair.
Well, I haven't got any new questions coming through particular about his Dark Materials, but I just wanted to, before you moved on to the polar bears, just pick up on then. You were talking about the kind of value of having these proxies or these animals on set. I mean, what was the particular feedback from the actors in particular? You know, did they kind of, oh, that was amazing, or kind of did it really help their performance?
It absolutely helped them. Clark Peters. He has a raven, and that the relationship between him and his demon is very important. It's not spoken, but there's an interaction and a sensation there, and you can't really act that. If you've got, you've got to find your light, you've got to remember your lines, you do your character, and then you've got to remember that there's something maybe over there. It's really, really hard. A good example, you saw Stel Maria earlier, in front of the fire. That was exactly the scene that would be a good example for this, in that I was there in front of the fire, and Clark, as the lecturer at Jordan College, the head of Jordan College, he had dialogue to do, and there was lots going on. There were cameras, there's makeup, and all that sort of thing, and he needed to give a sense that he knew there was a leopard at his feet. So during the take, I just, and he looked down like a shit. Oh, right. That's just, why should you have to act that? You need proxies, you need help, and creature effects particularly is about that, just offering some sort of help that permits people to make it more real. If as I say in that little blurb, if the actors believe, the audience will too.
That's really good. I was interested though, was the kind of the relationship maybe you had. I mean, you don't have to answer this if you don't feel you can, but like, did the value of the use of the puppets build during the series, or was it always right from the get-go? Yeah, these are really important aspects of the production, or was it something that once the value was seen, it was kind of built on?
I've been doing this for a long time, so I was doing this long before his Dark Materials. I've done it on Harry Potter and other movies. We're having something there more than a green ball on a stick is really important because of interaction. When we get to the bears, I can talk more about interaction, because sometimes if you are putting your hands into fur, the reason we bought the expensive fur, and I saw one of the questions earlier, like that's a lot, how much is it? The reason it's £50 per square foot is it is woven from scratch, any color you want, in acrylics, and I needed polar bear fur, so they did me, I think I got 5 meters, 2 5-meter rolls. By 5 meters by 1 meter, and it was an awful lot of money. But within it, there was the white, as you might imagine. There were creams in there, and there were also invisible threads, because polar bears have see-through fur. It's hollow, and so for the light to shine off it properly, like a real polar bear, not a cod puppet one, it needed to look great. It did look great, and I'll show you why it was so important when we come to the bear stuff. But hands in fur for CG is so expensive. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands to do proper interaction, and you generally have to rebuild the human's hands as well. So it's not just putting the fake fur in.
the little like kind of video clip that you showed of the demons being constructed, the puppets. That's really, really cool. And one of the questions was how long would that process take to kind of make to make Hester?
We were knocking them out pretty quickly because when we started, we didn't know how many there were going to be. Originally, there were going to be more demons for each character than it turned out to be the case. It actually pulled it back when they did the edit and the final shoot, because it was just going to get too confusing for an audience. It's all well and good, you know, you're reading books that thick and you can stay with it. Like now it's a leopard, now it's a fox, now it's an ermine, now it's a sparrowhawk. And that was just several, I think it was 16 iterations of demon for Lyra alone. You know, hers doesn't fix till she's 16 and everyone's going, oh, that's going to be expensive. So we built versions of all those things, but then came down to a core group that reflected the proper emotional quality of the scene. Because that's what the demon was, is an expression of the emotional aspect of the character. And we got into the reason I designed them so simply, like little slinkies, is that's a bit of rope and some foam, and you know, it is quite a nicely sculpted head and then a reasonable paint job. But actually, I could knock them out pretty quickly, you know, once we were set up to do that. And I really did have a good team to do that. So I think
the polar bears must have been a different.
Here we go. Brace yourselves, everybody. All right. So, yeah, we're heading north now to Svalbard. That's in the back lot in Cardiff, where we were testing different types of snow to make sure that it fell properly and landed on things and looked good. So, Panzerbjorn. That's just to give you the size. That's Yorick's size, based upon the CG character. And we had that 5-axis cut in Cardiff. So we just have something that could stand in and the camera could go, oh, it's that big, is it? Oops, we better pull back. And that's Lyra's stunt double who did quite a number of the scenes, but we were wondering how best to have Lyra have a direct communication with Yorick when she was riding him. And while with a horse you might go on the back, we were thinking actually it's better on the neck. And I sort of came to some rationale and looked at the skeleton of the bear. I thought, yeah, we could make that work. And even though in a full gait a polar bear's head moves up and down, we figured Yorick would keep it fairly steady for her to ride, and much more interesting to have that relationship of the two. So then we built a puppet version of Yorick in order that Lyra could ride it. And it was hand puppeteerable, directable, but air ram assisted. So the guy at the back could wiggle it up and down, and it could do a trot or a walk or even a gallop. We didn't need any more than the bit that actually Lyra sits upon. That was the main interaction bit. So the rest of it isn't that important. It would all be covered in the CG character. And there we are. Now there's some of that very expensive fur. So she could sit on it and her fingers could go into it to hold it, and there could be proper interaction. And the rest is all going to be CG. And Elliot and Brian, who do come to CYC, I've mentioned them already, they were the ones who were wiggling it, and they built up quite a lot of muscle. I did say it was going to be easy. It wasn't particularly easy, but it was brilliant. It did really, really work and turned out to be a lot of fun and was very directable, which a fully mechanical version would never have been, or a motion control version. This was, let's go faster, let's stop here, let's take a breath, let's think, let's have a dialogue. It was fully directable. And then there were other versions of puppetry that were placeholders and gave you the size, and that was shot up in Llanganedd Mountain in the Brecon Beacons, or close to the Brecon Beacons, where we built Trollesund. Where Trollesund was built, and the set is astonishing. It's so beautiful. But that's Yorick at exactly the right eye height, potentially talking to Lyra, That's a director and VFX supervisor. Coming out of the church, that's to give the size so everybody understands what that is. And here we go. So we thought you'd give you a bit of Basher Bear. I'm presuming you guys will have seen the shots. You mustn't tell anyone I'm showing you this. So here we go.
100%.
Are we live and hot? Live and hot, baby.
Okay, we're live and hot. And 3, 2, 1, action!
Ooh. Okay. Cool, eh? And here's the other one.
And 3, 2, 1, action!
So I just want to show you a bit about interaction. So as I was saying, the fur was there and I had a couple of 5-meter rolls. But again, this is something that would be too hard to do. So we built a stuffy, which is basically like a couch bear that Lyra could lie upon. So the structure was inside, and then a puppeteer was inside giving it breathing, so it looked alive. And also the guy who played Yorick, he was in the front doing the lines. And that's it up in Castle Cork, so not at all far from you, where we shot Three Bears Cave, where we shot that sequence. And you can see, really, it's just a placeholder, but it has to marry perfectly with the CG. So the color of that fur is critical. You can see where the head is. In the actual thing, Yorick's having a nibble on a reindeer, and Lyra is having a chat with him, and there it is. Now you can see the actor who's playing Yorick with his head out, and he has obviously got some stuff on his head, which is capturing his facial expressions, his snarls, rumblings, as he speaks to Lyra and emotes. And he was wonderful. And that's what you're seeing on camera. Those are actually the shots, which are pretty crazy. But CG replaced all that you're seeing of the actor who was playing Yorick. And we did various forms of proxy bear. This one you could ride, because Lyra rides Yorick out of that space, which was just a sort of a backpack and a space holder that could, and you know where the eyes are. And we're messing about again. But you can see in this, the GoPro cameras that were capturing the marker field on the actor's head. And now we're into the Bear Palace, which I'm hoping you guys remember. And using really simple puppetry. You know, what you're getting is something that people can interact with, where the eye lines are, even the physicality, you could touch the snout, and the performer who was doing the characterization was in the right place. This is Elliot, who again you will know, and my son David, who are doing the bear puppets that are the correct height for when they're in standing mode and when they go down, as you've seen that. So this is a little special gift to you guys. I'm assuming you will have seen the video or the actual program, but you won't have seen necessarily this behind the scenes. And this is the way we mapped out all of the action for this sequence. Boom. So in the top left-hand corner, you'll see Russell and Owain, VFX supervisor, and my stunt guy mapping it through. And you'll see, I would imagine, quite a similarity in terms of what happens beneath. Now, we've done a lot of research into animal movement. Grizzly bears particularly, they are astonishing when they fight. The weight of them, you imagine you've got that hit and the inertia, the dynamic, and the skeleton is really important. So we didn't want to do anything human, but it needed to be animal, visceral, brutal, and real, because we wanted you to have the sense of, oh, this is a fight to the death. And that pounding on the chest is something that bears do. You know, they're breaking through the ice looking for seals. But it's a ripping of the neck. I went, oops, that's the end of Yorick. So Yofa has won, or so it seems. But like, oh, you wouldn't want that to happen. I mean, the audience should feel this is bad. He's had it. And Yofa is claiming, you know, victory over this. Oh, Yorick's not quite done. Lyra stands in the way. Oh, Yofa realizes she's betrayed him, and oh, too late. That's the problem with getting too confident. You get your throat ripped out if you're a bear. So, and just to show you how marvelous it is and what the interaction, that's where Lyra sat, and I did have a very good time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Awesome. That was amazing insight there. I was just, as I was looking through that, I was just kind of, I just remember some of the conversations I'm having with my students, and there's a real concern about the use of kind of CGI, motion capture, or AI, etc., and the role of physical work.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on that. So whether it's kind of,
I have done a lot of motion capture. You know, if for those who do Xbox or, you know, any of those games, you've probably killed me on something or other, because I used to do lots of motion capture as characters in games like Fable and things like that. It's sort of odd. You do need to audition and cast your person, the people who are playing your characters, really well. I got quite well known for, and I was Grawp in Harry Potter, you know, did his body, and a few Dementors and Death Eaters and things like that. Now, yeah, but the thing that I discovered doing motion capture, that I have a particular look when I walk. So I'm really quite good at trolls, dwarves, orcs, goblins, but I don't do men very well. I can't, when I walk, I don't look like a man, just as not really acceptable. Oh well, you each have their own. But all of these things are just tools in filmmaking. There was an arrogance, I thought, for quite a while, where VFX companies said, oh, we're going to do it all in-house, and you're in darkened rooms and people are pushing sliders and moving their mice around to create anything they want to. But it was very dry. And so now it really is recognized that a combination of these things, or anything that works, as I said, is really what's going to give you the answer. And that sequence that I showed you, the bear fight, Yofa and Yorick, is what we got the BAFTA for. So, you know, the industry is recognizing. But as in order to film that bear fight, what we had to do was those puppet proxies were in to show relationships, where Daphne, the actress playing Lyra, where she could look, where she could be, whether they're rising up, or they're knocking things off the wall, or there's the dialogue sequence, you know, with Yofa going around taunting Yorick. All those sorts of things, all those are puppets and physical things. And as you also saw, there's the fur. You know, there's a physical interaction thing there. And in the sequence, Lyra actually strokes Yorick's muzzle. Well, that was real fur on a real puppet that may have only been there for a couple of seconds, but a couple of seconds is thousands of pounds worth of CG otherwise.
So would that be in the same in another production, say for Harry Potter? And there's a question come through: was there similar rigs for the troll in that? You know. So
yeah, well, that standing rig is almost exactly what I used for you know, in Harry Potter, in the one that I was in, 5, I think. Grawp was 16 feet tall, so it was a rod puppet, and I had arms and hands on rods. So at one point I meant to pick up Hermione. So I just was able to use the rods, and we get the relationship between the eye line, the hands, and the actress, correct? And then it cut to a model shot where he lifted her, and then a stunt girl was in there, and then there was a wide shot, you know, which is really a model. I mean, at some point, if I get a chance, I'll happily come to COIC and show you, go through a storyboard and how all that stuff is made. That's a sort of, you need to do that in the room, really, because I'll get everybody acting all the parts.
I think sort of changing it up slightly, and I've got one eye on our time slot here. We've talked a lot about film and TV and your kind of sort of aspects, those kind of aspects, but sort of if we kind of like widen the shot a little bit and more about you in particular, I think we'd be quite interested to hear on the kind of other projects that you pursue outside of the TV and film world, and maybe how they come together as well at the same time.
One of the most exciting things, the thing that is happening this year is COP26. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to launch into it. There's no preamble now. And very distinctly, you know, this has come about through Alistair, because he got a group of people together to try and develop a project. And we found ourselves in a very interesting chemistry and in a complete mix of science, technology, engineering, maths, and arts. All of which interlink. You know, in my art, I use a lot of engineering. I definitely use maths, you know, and then there's the technology that is inherent in trying to create the world, which is what theatre and film and entertainment often tries to do. But there's a problem, and that's climate change. That was a good segue, wasn't it? The problem is that, very unfortunately, for the generation that is on my children's age, you know, from 30 down to 19, the world that is ahead is very, very difficult. So I've always been interested, and this has been apparent all of my life. You know, I've always been involved with wildlife charities and environmental shows, you know, from my time in the valleys of Wales, and my A-levels, all that stuff was based on environmental change back in the 70s. And actually sea pollution, as it turns out. I mean, these things have been known for a long time, but they really have come to a head. So with Alistair and CS Connected, which is a high-tech company down in the sort of the Silicon Valley of Wales, with Screen Alliance Wales, who have been extraordinary supporters, both of me and of CYC, you know, what they're doing there, and the sort of interlinking of giving industry experience for students from CYC and USW, and look into their own futures, because they do need people to employ. So these groups have joined together, and we are doing a sort of mad collaboration that involves listening to the earth. And in order to do that, we're building devices, which will include help from students at CYC in terms of design and engineering. We are building costumes, probably, to do a mad cycle ride that goes from Cardiff to Glasgow. So we'll need some, within that, we'll need some fabrication and designs. We will need individuals who are doing editing, who are recording sound, who are doing animation in order to try and get our message over. And this will combine issues that are happening in Wales with climate change, you know, and maybe in 50 years in the future, a lot of Cardiff is going to be underwater unless we mitigate against that. And issues in Namibia, where I have relationship with the rhino charities and have been there several times, where there's been a drought for 8 years and there's no water and animals are starving due to nothing to eat because there's no water. So I've always seen an interlinking and a usefulness of puppetry and storytelling in helping to get over information that will help the environment. So art in the service of the environment is something I'm very keen on, and very, very kindly, and doing most of the work, the grunt work, is Alistair, you know, the CYC, trying to bring this into a reality. But I hope that some of you would like and will be able to join us in this mad endeavor over the course of this year that leads up to COP26 in Glasgow, which is hugely important for all of your futures.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I was hoping to hear about rhinos going up Kilimanjaro or whatever as well, but maybe that's another time as well. So
the thing that
with Douglas Adams.
Yeah, I do these daft things, and it's amazing Alistair's prepared to join me on any of this. But I did run marathons dressed as a rhinoceros back in the early 90s. And the first one I ran, I did not a runner, I'm sort of good. I was in the front of the scrum. So short distances with power I could do. 26.2 miles is blimey. And doing it in a rhinoceros costume, well, that just seemed too ridiculous. But nobody else at the time was prepared to do it. So I said yes. But the mistake I made, I found out, was I said I'd do it in brogues because the company who made the brogues would give half a ton of boots to Namibian and African game wardens if I got on telly. Well, dressed as a rhinoceros, running in brogues, of course I got on telly. So that was very successful. But at the end of the marathon, which I did complete, not in a great time, but I did complete it, I sort of limped over the line, got my medal straight into the St. John's ambulance, and I had the toenails that were floating off my toes on blood blisters lanced and removed. So Alistair, you still want to come up to Glasgow then? Oh, great.
Oh yes. Oh, I didn't say I'd be cycling. Maybe
there was another daft thing which Alistair mentioned. Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I managed to convince him to come and walk across some of Kenya with us. I walked out to the sea in Mombasa, to the Indian Ocean, all across Kenya, through Tanzania, up Mount Kilimanjaro, sharing this rhino costume. Douglas Adams came for some of the way and wrote an article. And now, me dressed as a rhinoceros, although it gets a bit of interest from the press, it doesn't really make a lot of difference. However, an article in GQ magazine made a big difference by somebody like Douglas that was then reprinted in The Guardian and various other places. And it changed votes in the Tanzanian parliament. So through this daftness, you can achieve quite important things.
Cool. Excellent. I think we've come to the time where it's the quick fire round. Okay, so we've got quick fire. So I've got an eye on the clock. So if anybody has got any questions they might like to be sort of answered fairly quickly, now would be the time to put them in the chat. But I've got a couple to hand which I can ask you. So they're not necessarily yes or no answers. But what's your favourite project you've worked on in TV and film, or even from a sort of environmental aspect, perhaps?
I've done quite a lot of my own shows, and it would be too long to really go into too much of that. If people are interested in seeing more of what I've done, there's a TED talk out. If you type my name in, you can find out stuff I've done and watch the TED talk, and that will give you 17 minutes of me trying to explain why I think puppets work, which covers a lot of what we've done, but it might give you greater insight. The favorite film, 2 films I've done, Little Shop of Horrors. I just love being in the plant and all that, directed by Frank Oz, who played Miss Piggy, who was Yoda. Incredible director, love puppetry, and we actually were able to finesse it. I'd highly recommend you guys watching Little Shop of Horrors as your homework. It's just a great musical. It's very dark. It's funny. The choreography is great in it, and the puppet weighs half a ton at the end, the one that you see there. The other film, very early in my career, but which remains a favorite just because it's bonkers, was Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And I got to play various proxies of the cartoon characters. So I did some penguins. It was Betty Boop in one thing. I was an octopus waiter. I got to be Roger Rabbit inside Bob Hoskins's coat. And I even got to be a bit of Jessica Rabbit. And for those who know what Jessica Rabbit looks like, that's quite a big jump.
That's it. That kind of leads me on to another question. Where do you get your confidence from?
It's a costume. A puppet is a costume. This is more difficult than most things. From the valleys, and I like to sing. I sing in choruses. You ask me to sing solo in front of a congregation or an audience, I freak out. But I get paid residuals for singing in a silly voice as a Muppet, on things. So it's the mask. you know, and even today, you know, there's a barrier there. I actually prefer it in a room with you guys, but generally I'll wear something or I'll put something on that, usually I'm in a t-shirt as opposed to something fairly reasonable.
Do you kind of sculpt at all, or
there's another thing. I'm a really good liar.
All right. Right.
And I have that one in the valleys.
So do you kind of like you know, in terms of
yeah.
your practice, do you sculpt or do you do like makeup, SFX, that kind of stuff, or you kind of quite sort of?
I'll do anything.
Do anything for money.
Anything I need to do.
Yeah.
I'll have a go at it all. I find animatronics, I get my head around it is quite tricky, but I know enough about it. But most of the projects I'm working on, I will have a team of people. What you've seen earlier in Ice Age Live or the Nut Job characters, I had a workshop maybe between 15, 20 people building a lot of those things. So it's not me alone. I feel I need to be like an umbrella, knowing how all those things can be made to work and actually taking decisions about what materials we do use. And I also have to do the budgets. So, you know, there's discipline in that. But I fabricate in fairly straightforward things. So I sculpt down, I don't sculpt up. So I'm sort of cutting away generally. I'm mostly better at that. I do use some clay, or Fimo is really good to build things up. But oftentimes they're so big, you know, you may be using a hot wire and carving a big lump of polystyrene. Or now you're working with ZBrush, creating it on a computer, sending it over to the guys with the 5-axis laser cutter, you know, and you get the piece back. I mean, very interestingly, and I would recommend all of your students engage with this, computers are very useful. And I have done things that have involved design. I was in Cardiff, I was working with a company in London, not driving up the M5, you know, the M4 rather, but just talking to them over Zoom, sending them the files. They sent the completed rendered files to Montreal. A guy there then made a pattern that sent back to Cardiff, and that pattern went on the CNC machine that cut out a millimeter perfect stick it together kit of a Panzerbjorn. You know, astonishing that you can do that. Whatever works. A lot of my prototypes are bits of cardboard and foam board, you know, and gaffer tape. I always do prototypes, and I would really advise, if you're in this world, you need to do that, because people need to know the size of something before they sign off. Building it and delivering it to them finished, and they go, ooh, you know, that's not good.
Maybe just to finish off, that's really good advice, certainly from a maker's point of view. But what advice would you give to the guys who may be kind of watching and listening this afternoon about getting a kind of toehold into the industry? What kind of sort of things do they need to have about their character or their work, or what kind of general advice would you might like to give to them?
It is really hard, and I would have to say I think it's harder now than it was. You know, I just meandered. I did do training as a dancer. I did have skills as a set builder. You can always walk into some theatre and they need something or other done when they come into the last few days before opening. You know, I'm good at fabricating things. I'll have a go at anything. I do listen to people, and that's really quite an important thing. But to just knock on the doors, take advantage of any internships that you can. Do not get exploited, you know, because there is a whole level on the spreadsheet of many accountants who say, oh, we could get these people working for free. And no, actually, that's a job, guys. And Screen Alliance Wales are very, very good about giving people experience without just exploiting. And I know we had Emily, one of Alistair's ex-students, working on his Dark Materials second season, and it was brilliant. So there's a relationship there that you should take advantage of as you can. There's some great props houses You know, I work a lot with Millennium Effects, John Schoonerand, animated extras. Look them up online, see if you can go in and have a look, have a chat with them, see if you can do some work there. Get a skill set, you know, and have a bit of fun. You know, just do some really bonkers things. As I say, when I was in college, I was on a performance course, but I used to break into the workshop and build things, you know, including SFX things like mirrors I could smash through. And one of my finest moments was as a rhinoceros in a theatre show, which is where my interest in rhinos really started, because they saw pictures of me in The Guardian, and a rhino charity got in touch and said, would you come and be a patron? And hence all the rhino stuff. But one of my big moments was in a rhinoceros costume, fairly realistic, full-size rhino. And it was an opera called Born Again, based on Ionesco's Rhinoceros, for anyone that knows this. But essentially what happens is there was a lift in the stage, and there's meant to be a shopping mall, and people are going around doing their shopping in LA. And the lift comes up, and in the lift there's a full-size rhinoceros. And everyone stops and looks at it, but nothing happens. And the really important thing was I didn't move for long enough that really the audience thought, it's just a puppet thing. And then I smashed through the glass, and it was a sugar glass, and the whole thing went like that. And the audience are there now. You've really got them for the rest of the show, because they don't know what's going to happen and how dangerous everything is going to be. So, you know, crossing the boundaries of performance and special effects and visual effects and creature effects and anything that works has always been a sort of passion for me. And I think the people I employ do the same sort of thing. I expect anyone that comes to work with me to be able to puppeteer. Even if they can't yet, I'll show them. They don't have to even do characters, but sometimes you just need to understand that that's life. And it's a thumb. That was all it was.
Cool. That's amazing. I think, looking at the time, I think we're just about out. I don't know if there's I don't think there's there's nothing more comfortable come through at the moment, but could I just take this opportunity to say thank you ever so much on behalf of all the creative students here at CYC, and I'm sure it won't be the last time that we'll see you, and hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll get to see you in the flesh in all your glory.
That would be good, or in some sort of costume.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Zach, I think we're going to call it a day, but thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks everybody for being there, your attention, good questions. I hope that made sense. Feel free to ask Alistair if there are any specific things. He can pass some of those questions on to me, and I'll try and get back to you as best I can.